again in this video, and because there's a lot of untouched ground that we can cover here, I want to go through 10 decks that are greatly benefited from the link summoning mechanic, and I also want to talk about 10 decks that are possibly negatively impacted by the mechanic. I also want to go through certain techs that you should probably be looking for in the near future. I also want to be talking about certain cards that might come off the ban list or possibly get onto the ban list because of the link mechanic. So let's just jump right into it, because this is probably going to be a decently long video. So we're going to talk briefly about the decks that could be possibly positively or negatively affected by the mechanic itself. So basically, we're going to be focusing primarily on link summoning and the extra monster zone as a generalization. We're not going to be focusing on primarily too much on, like, you know, the semantics of, like, you know, instant fusion, stuff like that. So let's just jump right into it. So, like, one of the few decks that I think and I probably missed some, by the way. And other decks that I think that are going to be really, really good are like Zoo. Zoo is probably going to be one of the cancerous decks of the format. Not to say that's a bad thing, really, but you know, it's going to have a huge showing, pretty much based on the sole fact that Ratpier and Zoo in general is just one of the most resilient archetypes that I've ever seen in a long time, and they already found a combo utilizing this deck with, like, Mrs. Radiant, the card that we talked about, I believe, a few days ago. So I do believe that this deck is going to be really, really strong. Probably, if not, it will be one of the top contenders of the deck. It will probably be the best, but it probably won't be the holy grail of decks in that format. So, yeah. Necros. You could play Necros without Shuret, and they don't necessarily rely on the extra deck, and when they do, it's very minor. But you could play Necros without Shuret, but if Shuret ever comes back, this deck could potentially become pretty good. Be almost tier 1 probably. But the reason why I say that is because they have built-in cards specifically designed to silence out the extra deck. They have Unicore, they have Bryanek that can bounce Xyz monsters or extra deck monsters. They have Colossus is still pretty good, and what's it called? And Trish, the card that we're seeing right here, is pretty fantastic. Plus, it's getting more support, so I wouldn't really, I wouldn't really doubt it if Shuret came back to 1. And if it does, the deck is going to be far superior of probably a lot of other decks that I'm going to be talking about here, minus like a few others. So I think that Necros has a very solid opening chance to become decently powerful in this format. So, or under this mechanic. So, and the next is kind of the same pretty much as the first one, minus the fact that they're kind of still at full power, is Infernoids. As long as Lawn Mowing Next Door or that Grasslook Greeter is a card, I believe that this deck will be the best deck, or one of the best decks, and one of the most resilient decks ever, until they decide to limit or ban that Grasslook Screener. This card is looking to be very, very promising, or this deck is looking to be very, very promising, and because one, it has multiple board clears, which kind of negatively impact link summoning, because I do believe cards like Dark Hole and Margeki, Lightning Vortex, and Kaiju Slumber, I believe those cards do reach into the link zone, or the extra deck monster zone. I'm not entirely sure. They haven't given us an official statement on that yet, but I do believe overall the Infernoid archetype is going to be one of the strongest archetypes in the upcoming set. Light Sworns, because the cards that we talked about, I believe, yesterday, if not the day before, Twilight Sworn, Jane the Twilight Sworn Paladin, and Punishment Dragon, secondly support for Light Sworns. And this card, or in this deck, again, it's kind of the same way as Infernoids, has a bunch of board clear potential. It silences the extra deck mechanic quite heavily because of that reason. And all in all, Light Sworns is just a very powerful deck, even though I personally don't like the playstyle of the deck. Regardless of that, I'm going to recognize that it is going to be one of the stronger decks in the format. It's probably not going to be as strong as Infernoids, because I think Infernoids are probably a little bit better. And it might not even be stronger than Necros, because I think Necros is slightly better than this deck. But it will definitely see some play. It might actually see a lot of potential. And who knows, it might actually rank up as one of the more diverse decks of the format. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. Cosmos. Cosmos is definitely an interesting deck. Not only can they utilize the extra deck monster zone better than most decks, by way of they can make Cyber Dragon Infinity, and then since that's just a 6 monster card zone, they could just pretty much fill their boards up with like Dark Destroyer, Eclipser, and a Dark Planet, and just kind of just silence you out of the game. You won't be able to play under Cosmos this way. If you're playing Cosmos, you're going to be greatly benefited from the extra deck mechanic because you don't necessarily have to rely on the extra deck just to do anything, and when you do, you're going to be winning the game. 9 times out of 10, Decode Talker, even if you decide to go that route, if you decide to put Link Monsters in your extra deck and summon Decode Talker is probably going to be one of the best Link Monsters that we're going to see until like November, maybe. Even then, you might still play it. So, Monarchs, because they could silence the extra deck pretty hard, and they don't necessarily rely on the extra deck mechanic. Unfortunately, I'm not entirely certain that Stormforth reaches into the extra deck monster zone. If it does, that's insane. So that's another reason why Stormforth should probably still be at 1. But theoretically, I think that this deck could possibly make a comeback. If Ether comes back to 2, or Pantheism goes to 2, the deck could be a little bit stronger. So I do believe that. Yosenju's, while this deck necessarily isn't the strongest deck on here, it does have a little bit of potential because the Link Summon mechanic, all they have to do is just normal summon like 3 monsters at most, send them to the graveyard, and summon like Decode Talker or Gaia Saber or something like that nature. And that's technically not a bad thing. Sending 3 monsters for a monster that's decently statted or has a decent effect is definitely pretty good. While I don't like sending Yosenju's to the graveyard for anything, I don't even like attaching Xyz material with Yosenju, because I think Yosenju's powerful enough to OTK you without them. But it just in case if you decide to, you don't want to do that, I feel like this deck could have a lot of potential and a lot of stay power if everything I'm saying is true. That the card is really good. Plus, Comma 1, I believe, reaches into the mechanic a little bit, and it can bounce cards like Decode Talker or Gaia Saber or Honeybot into the hand. So definitely, or the extra deck, definitely a thing to consider. Subtellar Knights. This deck is probably going to be a strong one as well, primarily because they can just go. They can activate Reinforcement of the Army, Dream Scenarios, Reinforcement of the Army, summon or search out Vega with Altair and Deneb in hand, summon Deneb with just add Altair to the hand, summon Deneb, add Altair, and then next turn after it dies inevitably, you summon the Vega, special summon Altair, special summon Subtellar Knight or Deneb, get another search, send 3 cards to the graveyard for your Decode Talker or your Gaia Saber, and just win the game. Other than that, also, I think that Trigger is still going to be a very powerful card in the Extra Deck's Monster Zone, regardless, and taking cards out of your opponent's hand with that card is still really good, so don't underestimate this deck. It might actually surprise you, honestly. PSY-Frames and Dark Sneaker, I'm going to lump these two in primarily together because it is going to talk about something like we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the video. And that is any deck that can make PSY-Framelord Omega with the greatest ease, like Dark Synchro, PSY-Frames, Infernoids can make it, and like DDDs, I guess, but DDDs might not be a thing. But anything they can make PSY-Framelord Omega or PSY-Frame Zeta for that matter is going to be a very strong component in the game, because PSY-Framelord Omega is like Starlight Road. If you activate its effect and you banish itself and then it comes back, it will be in the monster zone. It won't be in the extra deck monster zone. And that just leaves you a little bit more room to like set up plays. And like I said, we've already seen Quasar plays come out of the woodworks with this card. So we'll see how with the Level Eater. We'll see how much the Link mechanic kind of just benefits both of these decks. And plus, you could probably run the Link mechanic in both of these decks relatively easily. having access to like Deco Talker and Gaia Saber and Honeybot is probably one of the better aspects of this deck, or of these decks. So we'll see how they go. Onto 10 possible decks that are, well, possible 10 decks and or engines that will probably not see any more play because of what is occurring. Primarily like Glad Beasts and Blackwings. Simply put, because they have a very fixed extra deck. Sure, you could probably find some way to mix Link mechanics into it, but I don't think they're going to be as strong because they're super reliant on the extra deck, especially Glad Beasts, where you have to make Geyseris and other cards like Helio and whatever the other one's called. Not Nokius, but the other one, the level 5, and you could it's just overall underpowering the deck because they were reliant on the extra for quite some time. And I'm going to wrap this up a little bit faster, that way we can just get out of here, and that is like Pendulum decks in general. And no, Kieran is still going to be a very powerful card, I believe, if Pendulum decks somehow manage to survive the changes that they're receiving. Unicorn actually possibly might be one of the best Pendulum monsters in the game because it is unaffected by the extra deck monster zone. Because if you summon Unicorn from the extra deck monster zone, that's really good. But that being said, I think in general, like Magispectors, Metaphos, Formation Palace, Cleaforts, even Dynamis, DDDs, Ignites, I guess. Those decks are pretty much just going to be really hindered by the Pendulum mechanic. You think Ignites are bad when they can't really OTK your opponent? You just think that deck is bad. Now, when the new changes come around for Pendulum decks, that's gonna that deck's not existent. It is not existent whatsoever. So, yeah. Kaijus. This is a little bit controversial, actually, because while in theory Kaijus are still going to be very strong, you're probably still going to be side decking these cards. They're a little bit less weaker because if your opponent is smart enough and they decide to put their best extra deck monster into the extra deck monster zone and just leave it sit there, unless you have Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, it's going to be very hard for Kumungus or Gameciel or Raiden to possibly even touch that card. So I think overall that this kind of a little bit balances out Kaiju. It doesn't balance them by much, but it's just a little thing that I would like to point out because I don't think people have talked about this yet at all. It's the fact that under the circumstances that they were seeing here, cards like Gameciel and Kumungus might be really weakened because of the fact that they can't reach into the extra deck monster zone. I'm not saying that they're not going to be played, but obviously. You will be seeing these cards in play, but overall, when you're just trying to get rid of a powerful monster, it's going to be really tough to do so. Heroes, they were pretty fragile as they are, simply because they really didn't have anything else going for them except for like Totally Awesome and Bahamut Shark and Darklaw, and now that's pretty much just gone. Ultimately, because I think the extra deck monster zone kind of just kills it. Obviously, like if you get Shadow Mist off in your extra deck monster zone and you can manage to protect it, that's super strong. However, I don't think heroes will be fast enough to do that. I don't think heroes will be good enough to do that. Honestly, I honestly don't think so. And the last deck here is Burning Abyss. Now, again, this is another controversial one. Because believe it or not, this deck has some synergy with Rescue Ferret. Rescue Ferret summons 2 monsters that are up to level 3. You can summon Dante. You summon 3. You special summon 3 Burning Abyss from your hand. In the Dream Scenario, you special summon 3 random Burning Abyss from your hand. You send 3 of them to the graveyard, activate certain effects, yada yada yada. Summon Deco Talker, normal summon Ferret, activate Ferret's effect. Special summons like Seer and Graph from the deck. So overlay into Dante, activate Dante's effect, mill 3 cards, then overlay into Beatrice. That way you can just stop your opponent's Link monster. However, the problem with this deck is the fact that it's super reliant on the extra deck, like most of these cards are. or most of these decks are, but I think you can utilize them in certain ways other than better in other decks than the Burning Abyss. And I think Burning Abyss is long past its prime. But if the deck is good enough, we'll see it. Definitely, we'll definitely see it. Well, I think it's controversial. I just kind of don't want to put it because it is controversial. And cards that we might see come off the ban list, or we'll see come onto the ban list. So the cards that we might see on the ban list, and this is just for reference, is PSY-Framelord Omega. PSY-Framelord Omega is probably one of the best synchro monsters now, since the link mechanic has been announced and the extra monster zone is with it. Overall, the extra deck mechanic is or synchro monsters in general are weakened except PSY-Framelord Omega. This card is going to be the king of all of them because of its first effect where it removes itself from the field and then removes a card from your opponent's hand. Once it comes back, it'll be in the monster zone. Therefore, you could just use your extra deck monster zone for a potential link monster or anything like that. That's why I said when I was talking about Gamma and or PSY-Frames and Dark Synchro that anything that can make PSY-Framelord Omega probably has a very good chance of being relevant because of the fact that PSY-Framelord Omega banishes itself from the field, and it's really good because of that. So I think it might actually see a hit. It might be limited, but then also I wouldn't be surprised if this card was banned. As much as I love PSY-Frames and as much as I love PSY-Framelord Omega as a card, it's definitely an unhealthy card in this current state of the game. It might be a little bit too good. So. And we're going to be talking about cards that are going to be going off the ban list. I think Levolva Chain has a very good chance because if it's just trapped in the extra monster zone, it makes it a little bit more skillful. Sending monsters to the graveyard is not that big of a deal. Sending other cards just sending other cards from the deck to the graveyard is just okay. So it's not broken inherently. So I think it has a very strong possibility. Exciton Knight is also really good because it's a board clear, and it's probably one of the best cards that you could just sit in the extra deck monster zone and it actually wouldn't be terrible. Other cards among them are like Lightning, Cyber Dragon Infinity, Lightning Chidori, I guess. But for the most part, I think that this card is going to be really relevant if it ever comes back off the list. It might actually just jump back up to $30, which is why I ordered one, just in case. But you know how that goes. And Construct, since I think Shaddolls might have a deep benefit from the link summoning mechanic, even though I didn't talk about them as the top potential deck because they don't have Construct. If they had Construct though, this card or this deck could be really good. Just sitting Construct in your extra deck monster zone, making it immune from most from kaijus, making it immune from most things, is pretty good. I think either this is foolish of me to assume, but I think the extra deck monster zone provides a lot of protection for boss monsters from kaijus, because I think because of that, I think it's just an interesting way to look at it. Other cards that we might see off the ban list is cards like Magical Scientist, Cyberstein, Super Poly, Future Fusion, Post Nerf, and Wavering Eyes. These cards are definitely going to be very, very good. Are going to be very, very viable to come off the ban list, mainly because that they are reliant on the extra. Like Wavering Eyes in particular has the greatest chance, I believe, out of all of them to come back off the list because the pendulum mechanic is severely weakened because of the changes that they made. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely think that the deck is that Wavering Eyes is definitely a possibility now. So. Next is when we talk about cards that you should probably be looking into. If not, you should probably consider. The first card is Black Horn of Heaven. Now, the reason why I say this is specifically because of the link mechanic itself. If you just since link summoning is presumably an inherent summon, you tribute 3 monsters, or you tribute your monsters for like the Kotaku or whatever link monster you're planning on summoning. You activate this card, and then your opponent pretty much has to stop because you relied so much resources into the link monster that you're playing, that your opponent is playing, and it might honestly just win you the game because you shut them out of their future plays, and because of that, you could just easily scoop up the game because of it. I think Black Horn of Heaven might see you increased relevance in this game, in this meta. cards like Max C, because if you're playing a deck that can make Link monsters minus, like your Senjus, drawing like 4 cards is definitely good. So Max C is going to be relevant yet again. Raigeki board clears, because I do believe that all of them reach into the monster zone, or extra deck monster zone, so that's also something you should be looking into. And spot removal, Fissure, Smashing Crown, Bottomless Trap Hole, Compulse, Hammer Shot, I guess. All these cards definitely have a mainstay, or definitely have a reason to be in the game now. Bottomless particularly is really good. I think you might actually see a lot of play, because it's kind of similar to Black Horn of Heaven, where if you hit the right monster, you pretty much just stop your opponent from playing in the that turn. So it does have a potential to go up and be really, really good. So anyway, guys, tell me what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. Tell me what decks I missed that could be really good or really bad. Tell me what you think. Tell me which cards you think have the most potential in the Link mechanic because of, like, tech wise. Tell me if you think I missed any cards that could possibly come off or on the ban list because of the Link mechanic being a thing. So anyways, I want to let you guys go. This has been Team Metamorphos, and I will be signing out.